Today on Between the Lines, two pioneering voices that are transforming the way children acquire knowledge, Mark Horneff and David Miller. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick. Mark and David head up one of the most groundbreaking video game companies, Kuato Studios. Their mission is to inspire and engage children through a process they call learnification. It's a revolutionary way to engage and develop the skills required for a 21st century education.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of
You
corruption.
don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the first thing to do.
Mark, David, it's a pleasure to have you both here on Between the Lines. I got to play some of the games, so I'm finally glad to meet the creators and the minds behind it. Welcome to Between the Lines, guys.
Thank you.
Here, really lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an amazing chance to be here.
It is.
Well, let's. I want to begin with the term that you use, because it didn't even occur to me when I first met Mark in a whole different scenario. I told him that both my son and my daughter-in-law are very much involved in technology and education, and one of the terms that always came up was gamification. But I looked at your thing, and your website says learnification. And it didn't say the reason why it didn't say gamification, but I figured it out. So I'm going to share it with you, at least in my mind, was that what gamification really does is it takes curriculum and applies a game to it so that you can teach then the curriculum. What makes your Kuato Studios so revolutionary is you went the other way around. You decided to bring in some of the biggest game makers, make the game the primary thing, but make the game something that students and children of different ages can learn from. Thus, learnification.
Yep, that was interesting because when we formed the studio, and you're right, we went out and we got some of the biggest game developers we could hire, but we also hired David and a teaching team.
Old school teachers.
People who had never ever had a production schedule or deliverables, and programmers, had never worked with teachers before, and spent maybe 2 years, and I'm not kidding, 2 years arguing, or creative friction is what we call it, to get to the point where we were trying to work out what a learning environment was. And I think from our point of view, that came down to the natural engagement that a piece of entertainment has. So if you make a game correctly, you are hooked, you're involved, you're submersed in that, and then if you just seed it properly with the right information, that's a true learning environment. And I know I'm encapsulating that pretty quickly, but it was 2 years of proper drag-out arguments to get to that point. And learnification was the banner that we use in the studio to make sure that we don't gamify or illustrate a problem, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, gamification for us is almost a bad word, because we felt that gamification is all about the extrinsic learner, learners that basically just do things in order to be able to get a badge. But for us, that's not really deep learning. So what we wanted to do, as Mark said, was we wanted to start from the point of view of skills, 21st century skills for learning, which is problem solving, cooperation, empathy, all that kind of thing that's more about the process of learning rather than just about having knowledge shoved into your brain.
And also, when I got to play, this is kind of funny, of course, my gaming skills, I entered in 5th grade thinking, if I put in 5th grade, I'm bound to be able to pull this off. Meanwhile, my grandchild, 3.5, right away, just got there, stuck the finger, moving the thing around, and I'm going, she's 3.5, I should have put in 2, I don't know what I should have put in there. Because it is a game, and you've got to move the figures around, you got to get there, and then another thing that makes it so interesting, like many games, is you can personalize it. So unlike curriculum, which is meant for the standard or the group, learnification, in this particular case especially, is personalized for every single child that picks up any of the games that they've got.
I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, because you're right. Personalizing things are at odds with education, or at least the way it's been taught since Victorian times. It's very much a conveyor belt. It's a It's a process with which to get you to an examination that grades you for your next step of the education journey. But it isn't a learning journey.
Exactly.
And in order for it to be a true learning journey, it has to be personalised. I have to be invested, and I have to want to carry on that journey. And the easiest way to drive that engagement is to allow the kids to explore at their own pace. You'll notice that across a lot of our games, story is very important to us. Right, so the two games that we have, it's all about the child playing, learning, picking up facts, but crafting their own story. And at the end of that, they're rewarded with the book that creates that story. That learning journey and story is the bit that's very important to us, that we drive through our products.
But also, you know, what I found is that because it's designed like a game, you make choices. And the choices also determine then the outcome of the actual story. So if, for instance, there's words that you can actually choose, and it'll come up with like a thesaurus of other words that you can use in its place. So you can play this. Sometimes you can choose the word mom. Sometimes you can choose the word friend. Sometimes you can choose the word classmate. You can choose different words, and then the adventure, just like in a classic video game, becomes a different adventure and literally tells a different story.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. Like, so for Safari Tales and Dino Tales, because the child is able to gender and name their little creature, you know, that the emotional investment in the game becomes so much greater, like you say. So they've personalized their own little characters, and then when it comes to reading the story, you know, they feel as if they've created the story, which they have in a sense. And the beauty of it is when they come to the story, because you say the language is all there for them to play around with, so they're personalizing not just their characters, but the actual language that sits within the game, which is a really beautiful thing.
I think also, you mentioned choice there and decision points. And I think one of the things that a game affords you in the classroom or outside is the ability to explore consequence. So in the classroom, so if I give you an example, if I was to make a game, a chemistry game, it shouldn't be this is the one solution to the experiment. I should be able to fail successfully. I should be able to blow something up because I know why I'm doing it. But I can do that safely within a game. I can explore the consequence that's going to happen. I can look at the context of the information. I can make decisions that I'd be doing when a child would be doing playing on a rug with their toys at home, but applying that to learning. And really that's what it's about. It's the learning, exploring. We do tie to a curriculum, and it's easy to do, but that's not the be-all and end-all of the product. It's about the play.
And what Mark says about failure, you know, that within a game environment, because a child is in an immersive environment on their own in a sense, you know, they're able to feel that they can fail without feeling, you know, emotionally bereft, you know, by the fact of having failed, whereas in a classroom context, you know, failure to children is horrendous. You know, kids won't put up their hand because of fear of saying the wrong answer. Whereas in a game, you know, children just will learn resilience and so much more by constantly failing, trying again. And that perseverance, you know, it's quite interesting. I was thinking about this last night. I'm quite old school in my education. You know, I was using technology a lot in the classroom, but as a child, I learned the piano. And in a sense, learning the piano is a deeply immersive game experience, you know, because you've got the notation, you've got the music, you've got the technology of the piano itself, and you're immersed in the experience of creating music. And if you want to play a Chopin Polonaise or take your experience further, then you have to just constantly try again and fail. And you know, it's amazing, the immersive aspect of that came out when I realized I was playing Chopin nocturnes. I would start the nocturne and I would suddenly realize I was at the end of the nocturne, and I was so completely immersed in it that I wasn't even aware that my hands were making the music. Wow. And that's kind of the experience that you want children to have within games. You want them to lose themselves in the experience of the game
and
the learning, and that's where the deep learning happens.
And that's what you're saying. You know, 3.5-year-old can pick it up and play. They are naturally learning. That's what children do. You know.
Well, you know, you said something, David. I want to play off of it, because you said how children sometimes in the classroom, they're afraid to raise their hands for the answer. But I noticed something else. Children, before they get into the classroom, are never afraid of questions. But once they get into school, sometimes they're extremely afraid to ask questions. You actually have in Dino Tales, you have, I think in both of them they're named Darwin, aren't they? But one Darwin is
He's evolving.
He's evolving, right?
Evolving
You have two Darwins. He's evolving. I love that. Very good. In one of them, in Safari Tales, Darwin's a meerkat, and I guess he's a dinosaur or no,
He's a
He's
pterodactyl.
a
a pterodactyl,
pterosaur, yeah.
Okay, and what it is it's a safe haven for children to ask questions.
On behalf of myself, Darwin, I would like to... Hey, hold on a minute, Beaky. You can't thank all the boys and girls without me. I'm just as important as you, and more evolved. Okay, let's thank them together. On behalf of me, Darwin, and me, Darwin, we'd just like to... Hold on, aren't we forgetting somebody? On behalf of all of us, thank you for coming to our launch party!
That's what I found in teaching. It depends on the social demographic, how empowered you feel to ask a question.
Sort of jump in. I guess one of the things, particularly with the Tales, that we really went out of the way was trying to harness that questions. Because if you talk to any small child, then they'll ask you a question, you give them an answer, and they follow it up straight away with why, and you answer why. I mean, I think one of the most endearing questions my daughter asked me was how high was the sky? And I was kind of like, I was a bit stumped. So I went to Google, came back with an answer, and I was like, why? And she went, because I want to know where God's roof was. And her thinking was she had a purpose for finding the answer out, and wasn't afraid to ask these questions. And then my other daughter will ask why to anything. And so with the word wheel, it's impossible to play with that and not generate a question. Because I think one of the things that starts happening is you almost need to know the subject matter before you can ask a question that's relevant. And adults do it at the same time. At work, you don't want to ask a question because you're afraid that you'll look stupid, or you'll look silly, or you'll look uninformed. But the only way you're going to find that information is by asking that question. So within Tales, we created both the buddy Darwin that will help you answer, and he's based off the same technology that Siri's based off. We have a very good relationship with them and some exclusive licenses. But the word wheel was very much play around with just asking questions. And I think one of the best things we found was, I thought kids were only going to use it to find out where things were in the game, but our data shows they've asked every possible question. So they're asked. Sorry.
And in fact, I want to say, because when I was also I was trying to find out, okay, where's that rock? But you know what I found out is not only the wheel itself, you can put the question in a different phraseology, so you can actually do a why, a how, a where, a when, and then a where, a how, a why, and when for a different thing. So the combination becomes sort of endless. I don't know. I doubt if it's an infinite, because it's only it still is a child's, but it surely has enough possibilities that you're not going to get tired as you probe.
No, absolutely.
I think we're what, 10,000?
Yeah,
over 10,000 questions have been asked.
Oh, I tried to figure. I tried to break the bank. I'm going to level with you, and I couldn't do it.
In fact, yesterday, only last night, we got sent an email that within Safari Tales, over 1.5 million questions have been asked by the children. So they've asked every possible one we can think of.
Scientific questions, there's personal questions, because that's the other thing about the games you're learning, and humour should always go together. In my classrooms, humour is a really important part of the engagement process. If your mind is alive and crackling with potential metaphors and paradoxes, all that kind of thing, that should all be part of a game experience. So the kids are loving asking Darwin if he has a girlfriend, or are you happy, that kind of thing, what do you have for dinner? But then they're also interested to know, when did the pterodactyl die out? Why did dinosaurs become extinct?
How do you say good morning, Mum, in Swahili?
Yes, and in Safari.
I was going to say, even a foreign language. I saw Swahili in there.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing. There's all sorts of serendipitous learning going on, which again should be part of an experience. And that's the beauty of the word wheels, is a child could set out to answer a specific question in their head, but then they see other possibilities on the wheels and they think, oh, that's interesting, I'll maybe go down that particular route. And
and you're not leaving out the parents and the role that they can play. Each game had, and I'm talking about the two games that I played. We'll get into the third thing in a bit, but the two games that I played were Dino Tales and Safari Tales. because that's all you gave me on the tablet. But we'll get into that another time. But I did all the other research on the other one. But that's besides the point. The point was that when there was a parent's corner there in both of those cases, and not so much, although definitely can be acting as a monitor, but I didn't get that sense as much as it was to really see how the child themselves are evolving so that the parents could keep up with Darwin, kind of funny, but with that evolution, rather than, of course, they can monitor it as well, but it seemed like it had a deeper a deeper reason, and that was so that you could embrace what the child was learning and utilize that in your communications with your children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, children, it's so important for children, sorry to bump in there, but it's so important for children that the dialogue between parent and child is absolutely crucial for learning. You know, in the very earliest stages, you know, the amount of talking that a parent does to the child will infinitely affect how that child learns in future. Yeah. And, you know, so a game like Safari Tales or Dino Tales is designed to be shared with an adult. I mean, it's an absolutely intrinsic part of the experience.
Right at the beginning, you set the designers the task. I guess going back again it goes back to the learnification and where we think the market is. We're at a stage where children are adopting technology at phenomenal rates, and parents feel they're being left behind, or they don't know how to get on board that train and engage with their child with this new technology. So they then tend to demonize it a little bit and sort of say that screen time is bad time. So Dino Tales is very much designed from the beginning that the child plays, generates a story, the parent gets emailed, and there's an activity now, a shared activity where they can come together. The parent can read the story with the child, and the parent can see that the child didn't just, you know, play, but actually learnt some Swahili, found some fossils, did some creativity. They get to ask to reinforce the questions that Darwin has asked, and they sit there. And I think one of the most heartwarming things for me is when I've seen reviews where people have said, this is what we do at bedtime. They play for 15 minutes, they brush their teeth, we read the story together. And the child's super excited because they've created the story, and the parent can engage. So you now get this, all screen time isn't bad time. You know, and then if that happens, then it starts to extend to other activities.
I mean, it's a virtuous loop, isn't it? You know, the child creates, shares. I mean, it's exactly the same as a child learning an instrument. You know, I ploughed away all these scales and Chopin etudes and stuff, but it was always with a view to sharing the performance with the parent. I'm very proud of the piano. I am. It kind of makes me feel like a gamer, which I often don't in the studio. But yeah, but it's just quite interesting that whole thing, and in a way, you know, Mark talks about guilt-free gaming. I mean, in a sense, the guilt should be in the parent not talking to the child about their experience of the game. You know, that's the thing. You know, it's like a really good book. You know, you want a parent to be able to say, oh, tell me about this character and what happened in this chapter and why was it described this way. You know, that's what we want our games to be, is conversation points, deep conversation points between adult and child, or, you know, parent, child, grandparent, child, uncle, aunt.
You know, your website is going to appear under every time, or not every time, but when they see you. But we're going to take a little wide shot for a second, because I want to put the website down here so that everyone can see it. And I'm going to give it out because I want them to, we're talking about it, if they want to find out more information about this, I want them to be able to. So it's www. And they'll see it spelled out, Kuato Studios, that's KUATOSTUDIOS.com. But I'm leaving it up there for a second because the next game, the one you did not allow me to try yet,
hot off the presses.
It's literally hot off the presses. I saw it, by the way, before you got in here. Code Warriors. This game is something that if I say it and I'm wrong, we'll just cut it out. You're offering it for free.
Completely.
It's completely free.
Completely free.
And I was only able to demo it, thank you guys, but what I really found out was when I was doing my own research, a great quote from Steve Jobs. And by the way, if you haven't seen that film, brilliant, please see it. But this is the quote: I think everybody in this country, and I guess we'll have to include you guys from across the little ocean there. I think everybody in this country should learn how to program a computer because it teaches you how to think. And that's, first of all the games do that in general, but Code Warriors is specifically designed so that teachers, parents, and the kids could learn how to code, literally, a computer. Not that so much so, in fact, when Jobs said that, I don't believe he meant so that everyone could program a computer, but it's just like having this wisdom and knowledge that is almost a secret right now because we don't know how to do it. So it really opens up a source to us that demystifies the whole gaming and computer everything about it, technology.
It's so Code Warrior is absolutely free. It'll be on browser. We've put it on everything. We can make it as accessible as possible. And it's from our point of view, it's probably the most technical project that we have, because behind it there is this incredible analytics engine that analyzes everything you do and ties it to a curriculum. So from a teacher's point of view, you can see where your students are, how they compare to the global average, the borough average, the school average, across the actual curriculum that we use in the UK that is started, and we're going to be putting it in some schools in New York, and we're pushing it out, but it's free. It will never be charged for. There's no hidden costs, no advertising. It's for us, the mission is that important that we get people coding, that we don't want to put any barrier in the way. And it is important that people learn to code or appreciate code, I guess is what it is.
That's what I got out of it. I think it's that appreciation because when I didn't get to play it, but notice the threat, okay? Because for some reason I found that very exciting to me to be able to think about it. So I was able to go to the site and at least be able to see what it was going to do. There is that. It's almost like you've got sort of an inside information, like a hot tip on something. You know what I mean? You feel privileged now because you didn't ever know this before.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, the game allows children to use one of the world's most popular computer languages, JavaScript, to animate robots. And the game is a perfect marriage, equal marriage of learning design and game design. In other words, the child is unable to progress in the game unless they're actually using JavaScript, which is
Let me just say that you can, the way the game starts is at a very, very easy level. So you just press a robot, press the move symbol, and press where you want it to go, and it generates the code. So even if you never progress past that point, you've learned to start reading code, familiarize yourself with code. Now, if you carry on, you eventually start learning to type code and write your own code. But at the very basic strategy game level, code is being generated, and then you are being exposed to code. And we will be exploring other languages. But I think from my point of view, it's interesting you said that it's demystifying it. Because a lot of people keep saying we're going through this digital revolution right now, and I actually think we're going through digital evolution. Because if you take the industrial revolution that happened before, it's very mechanical, and interesting enough, that started with a lot of lords, a lot of professors. That's where the steam power and the engineering, to be an engineer was to be very rich. And then by the end of that, it was a very blue collar job to be an engineer. It had moved through the classes. Coding right now is very much a mystery thing for some people, and I'm not saying you have to be a lord to code, but there is an exclusive layer of coders. I reckon within the next 10 years, the way the houses are getting ridiculously connected, that you'll call a coder to your house the same way you call a plumber, and it'll become a blue-collar job back down there. You'll have this, there will be a workforce of coders that aren't just making games.
I just hope they'll be cheaper than the plumber.
Well, yeah, I mean, but if I'm telling people that their son can become the new digital plumber, that's a fairly lucrative business to be moving into.
I agree. I want to talk just briefly about some of the overall missions of the studio and both of yours visions about it. And one of them is that and this I guess is where I literally feel I lacked and was beginning to almost gain a little bit, strategic thinking. That's a little different than other type of thinking. It differs from, because it forces you to, as a chess player almost, think ahead of the next thought. So it's not like you're learning from thought to thought, which is classical linear education, but strategic thinking forces you to be able to bounce around, and that's part of the mission that you guys wanted to see happen.
Well, that's learnification in a sense. That is the problem-based learning, your collaborative learning. That's the game exemplifies that perfectly, because the kids are given problems, lots and 60 challenges on each different level of the game, and it's their ability to solve the problems, both thinking strategically and using the JavaScript at the same time, which is creating the real learning experience.
I also think the way the children are interacting with information now is at a very, it's at a tactical level. So it's what do I need right now? And they'll look at a piece of information. What do I need for this? And look at a piece of information. And they have all these little nuggets, but they lack the narrative that ties together, or the context starts missing. And that's why teaching strategic thinking is important, because it ties that together. And that's one of the things you get from coding, because you can't, much like learning a language, you have to know what you're about to say next. There is a series of instructions.
Gentlemen, our time is up. I just want to end with one more form of thinking that you can't help but get from what you guys created, and that is innovative thinking. Thank you both for sharing your innovative thinking with us today.
Thank you. It's very kind.
It's our pleasure, and thank you guys for joining us. Now, before Mark and David leave, I'd like to leave you with these words found on their website by the educational reformer John Dewey. If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow. I'm Barry Kibrick. There may be a gap between how we taught in the past and the ways we need to teach today. Close that gap, and we will not rob our children of anything. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Closed captioning for Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible by your generous contributions to KLCS Education Foundation. Thank you for your support. To connect with Barry, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Barry Kibrick. And to contact Barry directly, watch past episodes of Between the Lines, and read his blog, visit us at barrykibrick.com.